The United States has dramatically escalated its campaign against drug cartels in the Caribbean. Over the past several weeks, the Navy has carried out targeted strikes on suspected smuggling vessels off the coast of Venezuela and in other contested waters. The campaign, authorized by President Donald J. Trump, is being presented as a decisive blow against what he calls cartel terrorists. Standing before a crowd of service members, the president opened his remarks with an unapologetic declaration. In recent weeks, the Navy has supported our mission to blow the cartel terrorists the hell out of the water, he said, his tone forceful. He then added with a hint of grim satisfaction, and you know, there are no boats in the water anymore. We can't find any. The president argued that the success of the strikes has been so sweeping that even legitimate fishermen have become wary of going to sea. He repeated the claim with emphasis. The usual flotillas of small trafficking vessels have disappeared. Then he delivered what he called a sobering statistic. Every one of those boats is responsible for the death of 25,000 American people and the destruction of families. So when you think of it that way, what we're doing is actually an act of kindness. Pausing briefly, he went on, "We did another one last night. Now we just can't find any. We're so good at it that there are no boats." He warned that the cartels would be forced to shift their routes inland. They'll be forced to go by land, he said, and let me tell you right now, that's not going to work out well for them either. The remarks underscored a new phase of the US war on drugs, one that treats cartels as hostile combatants rather than merely criminal syndicates. Earlier this month, the president formally notified Congress that the United States is now engaged in what he described as a non-international armed conflict against certain transnational cartels. In that declaration, the groups were classified as unlawful combatants, which the administration argues justifies military action against them under the laws of war. The policy has been accompanied by a surge in naval deployments to the southern Caribbean. Warships and surveillance aircraft have been stationed in key maritime corridors traditionally used by smugglers. Officials say the goal is to shut down the seaborne trafficking routes completely. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth confirmed that US forces have conducted several such strikes in recent weeks. In one of the most recent operations off the Venezuelan coast, Hegseth said 4 people were killed aboard a vessel suspected of carrying narcotics. He insisted that these actions were legal and necessary. According to him, the campaign will continue until the cartel's capacity to use maritime routes is eliminated. Administration officials have pointed to what they describe as tangible results. Maritime intelligence shows a sharp decline in the number of fast boats attempting to cross Caribbean waters. Some analysts in Washington believe that one of the cartel's primary smuggling networks at sea has been disrupted, forcing them to attempt overland routes through Central America. A dramatic example came in a joint operation with the Dominican Republic. Authorities there said they seized more than 377 packages of cocaine, roughly a metric ton, from a speedboat that had been destroyed in a coordinated strike with US forces. Dominican officials hailed the operation as a breakthrough in regional cooperation. But critics, including legal scholars, human rights advocates, and several lawmakers, have voiced serious concern. They question the legality of military strikes against suspected smugglers on the high seas. Some warn that such tactics blur the line between law enforcement action and acts of war, risk undermining international norms, and could embroil the United States in deeper conflicts with neighboring states. Those concerns are not merely academic. Tensions between Washington and Caracas have already risen. Venezuelan military aircraft recently flew close to US naval vessels patrolling near its coast, maneuvers that the Pentagon publicly described as highly provocative. Regional observers warn that further incidents could lead to dangerous escalation. The administration, however, remains determined. Officials argue that the cartel's sea routes are effectively shut down, a claim underscored by the president's repeated boast that we can't find any boats in the water anymore. Now attention is shifting to land corridors. US officials say the campaign's next phase will focus on supporting regional partners to block overland smuggling through Central America and Mexico. For the president, the issue is not just about stopping the flow of drugs. It is about demonstrating resolve. He characterized the campaign as both a moral obligation and an act of national defense. Pointing to the tens of thousands of deaths attributed to narcotics in the United States each year, he framed the military strikes as protecting American families. The tone of his address blended combativeness with populist appeal. He urged unity behind the campaign, closing his remarks with the familiar rallying cry, "For the good of our nation." let's work together, and let's truly make America great again. The president's speech unfolded against a busy geopolitical backdrop. News bulletins during the day highlighted a foreign leader's comment that we will have to speak to Putin and to Zelensky, signaling renewed diplomatic efforts over the war in Ukraine. Other analyses in the same news cycle described the US-India relationship as probably the most important bilateral relationship the US will have for the rest of this century. Meanwhile, fresh election results from a major capital city were reported, and policy experts debated what one commentator called the million-dollar question: how to stop this dance of death. In field reports, journalists described standing at the crossroad of the Kuma, pointing out the numerous illicit entry points used in regional trafficking. Special segments examined the politics of far-off regions such as Manipur in India and the mineral wealth of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, often cited as an underdeveloped yet resource-rich nation. This broad sweep of stories underscored that the fight against organized crime and the defense of national security do not happen in isolation. They intersect with global diplomacy, regional conflicts, economic competition, and the debates over human rights and governance. The administration's campaign has already altered the dynamics of drug trafficking in the Caribbean, yet experts warn that cartels are highly adaptive. As sea routes become riskier, they may turn to clandestine overland pathways stretching from South America through Central America toward the US border. Some fear that this shift could spark new violence in transit countries. Others believe it will drive up costs for smugglers and make their operations less profitable, a potential long-term strategic gain. Legal and constitutional challenges are also likely. By framing the conflict as a war, the president has claimed powers traditionally reserved for wartime operations. If civilian casualties occur or sovereign borders are crossed without consent, the administration could face lawsuits or international condemnation. The next phase will test whether the declared armed conflict framework can be sustained in courts of law, in Congress, and in the court of global opinion. The president's declaration that the campaign is an act of kindness reflects a particular framing, that decisive military action against traffickers ultimately saves lives by reducing the drug trade's devastating toll on American families. Supporters see it as a necessary show of strength that finally delivers results after decades of inconclusive efforts. Detractors see it as a dangerous precedent, one that militarizes what has long been considered a law enforcement challenge and risks dragging the country into new conflicts abroad. Whether this moment marks a lasting turning point or a perilous overreach will depend on what happens next, not only at sea but on land, in legislatures, in courts, and in the fragile relationships between the United States and its neighbors. For now, the images from the Caribbean, shattered boats, confiscated cocaine, and the determined faces of US sailors tell a story of a campaign that has moved from rhetoric to action. As the president put it, they'll be forced to go by land, and that's not going to work out well for them either.